The learning objectives of this chapter are to gain an overview of the various crane types discussed in this module, and to briefly examine their routine use and application on board. This training program will feature the following types of service crane: manifold crane, both derrick and jib type, travelling deck crane, bow and stern hose handling cranes, provision crane, both gantry and jib type, engine room crane, girder type, monorail and dual rail pattern. Manifold cranes are in a fixed location, placed so as to be able to distribute equipment around the cargo handling area of a tanker. They are used to lift hoses, connecting pieces and other equipment between storage containers, cleaning stations and the manifold, and to lift hoses on board from shore. There may be one crane located on or near the centre line, or two, placed to port and starboard closer to the ship's sides. The jib or boom may be telescopic to allow a greater reach. Increasingly today, electric or hydraulic jib cranes are found, although the traditional design is a pair of derricks run from small hydraulic or steam winches. This type of crane moves along a set of rails that run the length of the cargo deck. It fulfills the function of the manifold crane described in the previous section, but has the increased flexibility of being able to move equipment along the whole deck, sometimes including the forecastle and back as far as the accommodation. Shuttle tankers typically have a crane located on top of the forecastle turret or platform deck used to assist in the hose handling operation. It is usually of jib design. For the same purposes, vessels equipped with a stern loading and discharging line frequently have a crane located on the poop deck for hose handling. However, this crane also often reaches the provisions and engine room hatches, and can therefore be used for handling spares and stores as well. This type of crane is designed and located for the handling of provisions. It can be of gantry design with the motors and hoist mounted on a suspended trolley running across the ship, typically between the accommodation and engine room housing, or a jib type located somewhere on the housing. In some cases there are two cranes aft, one on each side of the ship. Either way, the reach of the crane will allow for transfers of pallets and other packages between the shore or a barge alongside and the provisions hatch. In many cases, another hatch or a flap that can be opened at a lower level will provide access directly to the engine room, also allowing the handling of spare parts. Various types of engine room crane are found, ranging from heavy-duty rail and gantry types to smaller monorail hoists. The larger heavy-duty types, also sometimes described as suspended or overhead cranes, typically have their motors mounted on a suspended beam trolley, or telfer, which runs back and forth on a transverse beam, itself running on dual parallel longitudinal rails along the top of the engine room, thereby facilitating movement in two planes. A small jib or multiple hoists may also be included in the design. The primary purpose is that of main engine overhaul and the movement of heavy equipment and spares. Smaller monorail hoists, sometimes with just a running bogie and chain block arrangement, facilitate the handling of smaller equipment and spare parts in the workshop and spares storage areas. The main power types for service cranes on board ships are hydraulic and electrical, although some have dual power sources. Hydraulic is the preferred power supply for outside cranes, such as those located in the manifold area. Travelling deck cranes are commonly powered by independent hydraulic motors mounted inside the crane housing. Engine room cranes are usually powered by electrical motors, as are gantry-type provisions cranes, where the motors can be better protected from the weather. The starter boxes may be at remote locations, often adjacent to starter boxes for other equipment, in dry and explosion-proof areas. It is rare nowadays to find steam-powered mooring winches, but some older tankers do still have them. In such cases, the winches for manifold derricks are also generally steam-powered. The following pages indicate the basic components of the different crane types. This is just to indicate the terms that are used in this module, as there is some variation in different parts of the world, and not all students will be aware of the English translation of these items.
In the next page, you will be presented with the images of following types of crane. Manifold crane fixed jib type. Manifold crane fixed derrick type. Traveling deck crane. Bow hose handling crane. Stern hose handling crane. Provision crane gantry type. Provision crane jib type. Engine room dual rail main crane. Engine room monorail crane and workshop or store flat. Take down some notes on each and every type of crane you will encounter. You may pause this video to have more time to study the parts of the crane.
The following basic terms, together with brief explanations, refer to the primary movements of a crane. The terms, or the rough seaman's language equivalents, are also shown in various languages. Hoist, to lift a load. Lower, to lower a load. Slew, to turn or rotate the crane. Luff, to raise or lower a jib, thus moving a suspended load horizontally towards or away from the crane. Luffing is sometimes referred to as derricking. For a travelling deck crane, this describes moving the crane along the rails. For the engine room gantry crane, it describes the movement of the transverse beam along the longitudinal rails, by which the trolley and hoist mechanism are manoeuvred forwards and backwards. The learning objectives of this chapter are to examine the role and responsibilities of the signaller and to review a set of approved manual signals for use in directing a crane operator. The European Union Directive 92/58 EEC sets out a series of coded hand signals to be given by an assistant to a crane operator. This information is reproduced in many industry guidelines, including the UK Maritime and Coast Guard Agency's Code of Safe Working Practices for Merchant Seamen. If, however, selected alternative signals are already in common use and fully implemented under the company safety management system, then they will continue to be used instead of the signals shown in this chapter. What is critically important is that all personnel involved in the operation of a crane are working to a common system of signalling. Where the operator of a crane does not have a clear view of the whole of the path of travel of any load lifted by that crane, appropriate precautions should be taken to prevent a dangerous situation developing. This is normally achieved by using a competent and properly trained signaller to give instructions to the operator. A signaller is a designated person who gives directional instructions to an operator while they are moving a load, whether by manual signals, by radio, or otherwise. The traditional terms flagman and banksman are also sometimes used for this duty. Signallers should be instructed in and should follow a clear code of signals, agreed in advance and understood by all involved in the operation. The signaller should have a clear view of the path of travel of the load in situations where the operator of the lifting appliance cannot see it. A signaller should be in a position that is safe and in plain view of the crane operator, unless an effective system of radio communication is in use. The following pages illustrate a basic set of coded signals only, some of which apply to particular designs and types of crane. They are based on the signals found in the Code of Safe Working Practices for Merchant Seamen and implemented by the EU Directive 92/58 EEC. Additional signals may also be required to account for particular procedures on your ship. Note that directional signals are given in relation to the signalman's position and orientation. Remember that the signalman may be facing forward, aft, or across the ship at the time. Remember too that if alternative accepted national signals are already in common use, then they will continue to be followed. The following are general signals. Start or attention. Both arms are extended horizontally with the palms facing forward. Take the strain, sometimes referred to as inching the load. The right arm points upward with the palm facing forwards. The fingers are clenched and then unclenched repeatedly. Stop, being a temporary interruption to or the end of a movement. The right arm points upwards with the palm facing forwards. End, finish or operation complete. Both hands are clasped at chest height. End, finish or operation complete. Both arms are extended at 45 degrees downwards, and the lower arms are then crossed back and forth sharply across the lower torso. Secure. Both arms are crossed closely to the chest with hands clenched. The following are signals to be used for vertical movements. Hoist or raise. The right arm points upwards with the palm facing forwards and slowly makes a circular movement. Lower. The right arm points downwards with the palm facing inwards and slowly makes a circular movement. Extend or telescope the jib. Signal with one hand, the other hand on head. This instruction does not apply to cranes with a fixed length jib. Retract or withdraw the jib. Signal with one hand, the other hand on head. This instruction does not apply to cranes with a fixed length jib. Vertical distance. The hands indicate the remaining vertical distance to be moved. The following are signals to be used for horizontal movements. Move forwards or travel towards me. Both arms are bent with the palms facing upwards and the forearms making slow movements towards the body. This instruction applies to the movement of travelling cranes or gantry cranes running on rails. Move backwards or travel away from me. Both arms are bent with the palms facing downwards and the forearms make slow movements away from the body. This instruction applies to the movement of travelling cranes or gantry cranes running on rails. Right, in the direction indicated, that is, to the signalman's right. The right arm is extended more or less horizontally with the palm facing downwards and slowly makes small movements to the right. This instruction applies to the movement of travelling cranes or gantry cranes running on rails. It does not apply to the movement of the jib. Left, in the direction indicated, that is, to the signalman's left. The left arm is extended more or less horizontally with the palm facing downwards and slowly makes small movements to the left. This instruction applies to the movement of travelling cranes or gantry cranes running on rails. It does not apply to the movement of the jib. Horizontal distance. The hands indicate the remaining horizontal distance to be moved. Slew right, in the direction indicated, that is, to the signalman's right. The right arm is extended 90 degrees from the elbow only. This instruction applies to the movement of the jib. Slew left, in the direction indicated, that is, to the signalman's left. The left arm is extended 90 degrees from the elbow only. This instruction applies to the movement of the jib. The following is the danger signal. Danger, or emergency stop. Both arms point upwards with the palms facing forwards. Additional operating instructions may also be in place on board to indicate such items as speed up, slow down, clear, load is clear of hatch, coaming and other obstruction, stand by, for further instructions. If radio communication is used between the operator and the signaller, then a separate channel should be used to avoid possible interference of critical instructions. For preference, the operator's radio should have a hands-free facility, thereby avoiding the operator having to release control levers to acknowledge instructions.